So this is gonna be an episode with a guest that needs zero introduction. He's been on my show before. He's a very good friend of mine, Jason White. How you doing, Jason?
Good, Tyler. Good to be here.
Yeah,
Hello
it's
to all
awesome
your
to have you.
listeners.
You, sir, are a very busy individual. I don't know how you do it.
Well, I have to juggle. I juggle a lot. I've been speaking, not only do I have to work as a homicide detective, and I teach a lot just in the course of that job. I teach a lot of the death investigations I teach all the death investigations for our department, and then interview and interrogation currently. And then I teach at various schools and things like that, of course, locally. But I've been lucky enough for the last 10 years. I've been going all over the country from coast to coast, and I usually hit about 4 to 5 places every year. And so I have to do that. Well, I don't have to. It's my pleasure to do it, and I'm blessed to do it. And I was really busy. October, I was in Palm Springs, and then I went off to, let's see, Palm Springs, and then Carolina Beach, North Carolina. So from coast to coast. And I just right before I got on here with you, I just returned from Eastern Tennessee, where I was speaking at the Tennessee Crisis Negotiator Association, and in Gatlinburg, which was epic, epic. I've had three exceptionally awesome locations to teach and speak, and it's been great. I love it.
I saw one of your videos of the haunted cabin in Gatlinburg where your wife scared the crap out of you. First of all, that was hilarious.
Thank you.
Secondly, was it actually haunted?
Hello, Jason White here in the Great Smoky Mountains just outside of Gatlinburg. Gatlinburg is about a mile and a half down the road. We're up here by this old cabin. It's called Ogle's Cabin, and this thing was abandoned in 1925. He lived here from 1883 to 1925, and it's a really old cabin. And this place out here, let me tell you, it is beautiful, absolutely beautiful. Tina and I are up here kind of on the hunt. We were looking for some bear, because we keep hearing from the people at the hotel that the bear are thick up here, and they travel down into hang on, I think I hear Tina coming into this house. But basically we're going to walk into this house. It's really dark in here. It's kind of spooky, but definitely scary. There's a fireplace in. Oh shit! There she is. I don't know if it was haunted or not, but that was a legitimate fear. And then I didn't put the part up where after I had reprimanded her she wasn't supposed to be down there. She goes, "I'm going to stay up here at the car and just go down there. It's too treacherous for me. I'm not going to go down there." So I thought that was her maybe coming down there, and turned out it was, and that was legitimate. I don't stage anything. So, but if you knew me, I'm pretty jumpy.
That's awesome. Well,
you have no idea how many. Well, you have no idea how many bears are running around that area of Tennessee.
Yeah,
I mean, we saw one We did 5 minutes after that, right on the road, right down the road, and it was a big one. And then when I went down into town later that night, there was several sightings, and we're not talking small black bears, we're talking big ones, and they'll just come right down there into town, and they might walk into the candy store and just basically grab a handful of candy and walk out. And that's true.
Oh yeah. I've heard some amazing stories about bears interactions, and they don't care. They'll go wherever they want to go.
Yeah, well, they're on the verge. The weather's been so good. They're a little bit they're a little bit confused because the weather is so good. It was like 77 degrees yesterday in Gatlinburg, and so they're wanting to hibernate, and so they're looking for food is what they're doing. Which, from what I've been told, that's a real dangerous time for them, because they're towards the end where they're about ready to start hibernating, and they're on the search, and so you don't want to mess with them. But it's a little bit weird, because it's like they're just used to humans, and they don't really really mess with them. They just kind of go their own little way, kind of a deal. But
Well, bears and I have that in common. One, you don't mess with me when it comes to food, especially when I'm on my diet.
yeah,
And
yeah,
two, I don't really care. I will go wherever I want to go to. So there's that.
yeah.
So cool. So you had a good trip. That's good. What else you got planned coming up this year?
Well, this Friday, actually, this Friday, I will be making an encore performance at the U.S. Marshal Museum in Fort Smith, Arkansas. So for your listeners, if you have any listeners, if they listen to this in time, I don't know when you're going to post this, but if they listen to it in time and they don't have anything going on November the 21st, which is this upcoming Friday, from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. at the U.S. Marshal Museum in Fort Smith, which is a really nice venue, they can come down there and they can watch me speak. And Tyler, I do the real deal, man. I don't sugarcoat things. Don't bring your kids. It's not for kids. But I show real life homicide cases, and we kind of take a journey together, and I give them and enlighten them as to the life of a homicide detective and kind of how we go about doing things. And this is a really exciting time in law enforcement to be involved in this industry, because the world of technology, Tyler, as you probably are well aware, is epic. I mean, it is absolutely incredible the amount of technology that is existing right now, and we are solving cases today that 2 years ago we wouldn't have solved. I mean, they would have been cold cases, no doubt. And at least for Tulsa, we haven't had a open case. We haven't had an open homicide case since the summer of 2023. So I think we've got like 110 straight, if not a little bit more than that. And in large part, it's due to technology, flock cameras for one, but and then there's a little luck sprinkled in there. I mean, I'm not going to say that we're not lucky from time to time, but we're on quite a run, and but I have to give a lot to the community, and then also with technology, of course.
I think every field in public safety you have to have a little bit of luck, uh, regardless of what you're doing. So I get that.
You do. Not only that, but as far you already know that in the medical field too. I mean, they're saving people today that they wouldn't have saved 5 years ago.
hmm
I it's
Oh yeah.
they're you make it to the trauma center, or to any emergency room, really, for that matter. They're really good, and they're saving lives that it's still shocking to me. I mean, you get people that are shot 7+ times, and you're like, yeah, there's no way this guy's going to make it, but yet they somehow managed to do it, and it's pretty amazing. It's an incredible time to be involved in this, and I'm lucky to be there.
So you mentioned technology is obviously playing a role in crime scenes and just um, police in general. Do you see AI coming in and starting to be used in the police force in any way?
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, I don't have a lot of examples as of yet, but I will tell you that with respect to uh, I have heard, I can give you a case example, and I've heard this, and I can't give you the deep dark secrets of it, but I have heard that in some way or another that they've used AI, and they feel like they've solved the Jack the Ripper case from
I
England.
did hear about that. Yep.
Yeah, and by utilizing AI and just basically importing all of this stuff, giving them what the likelihood of this and that, and however, my gosh, I just did this a couple of days ago. You can go to Songer dot. I'm throwing a plug for them, Songer.com or whatever it is, and man, you could you could mix a hit in like literally uh,
hmm
a minute and a half, and the thing sounds epic. You know what I mean? So I think
Oh
that
yeah.
that's going to put music writers out of business. But there's no doubt that AI is playing a role, and like I said, I would love to hear a class on some of the different examples as to how that's happening. But I haven't, I'm sure that that's going to have something to do with building DNA strands and everything else. uh, AI is going to be something that hopefully it's going to not turn into what the internet has had a tendency to turn into, which is a dark side, with the
Yeah.
dark web, etc. I mean, you're already seeing kind of some examples of that where people are putting together AI videos of people saying things that they did not say, and that's
Hmm.
really something that they're going to have to be concerned with, because you make the wrong people mad, and they're liable to throw a video of you out there saying something that could ruin your life, honestly. So
I saw or I either saw a video or was listening to a podcast, one of the two. They were interviewing. This person was interviewing Matthew McConaughey, and Matthew McConaughey was talking about how he had to actually put a trademark on his voice. And I think there was one other actor. Can't think of who it is now. But there's
well,
another
I mean, you
actor
know
that had
what,
to do
if
the
you
same thing that's actually suing a crap ton of people right now because they've been using his voice on a lot of things too.
Yeah, it's really scary. It's scary stuff. And like I said, if you can, and that's just one example of one of those things that they're going to have to get a hold of. Hopefully they're going to be able to do that. And I don't know how you do it. I mean, the technology, just that technology in and of itself, Tyler, is look what that's able to do. And that's overnight. I mean, I know AI has been around for quite some time, but for us, just the general citizen, it's new to us, man. I mean, within the last year, maybe year and a half, to where we've had access to doing some things. But yeah, I think AI is going to absolutely have a huge part to do with things. I think that it's going to be a hurdle in courtrooms and stuff, as it always is. It's always something that they're going to have to tackle. I'll give you a quick example. Just an example, and it's not really AI related, but we're talking about we're talking about like flock cameras, to just give a quick example of that. And they're in about 42 states at least, and
What
those
is a
things have
flock?
solved.
What is a
Oh, what
flock
is a
camera?
well, it's a brand. It's a brand. It's a camera system that was invented by a guy in the Atlanta area, and I think that this guy was, if I remember correctly, I think this guy was the victim of a burglary, or there was a number of burglaries that occurred within a neighborhood that he was living in, and so he just kind of put some cameras up in his neighborhood to try to catch who this person was doing this. And it was so effective that he's like, hey, wait a second, maybe we're onto something here. And so he started this business. And I really don't know how long it's been around, but I do know that these flock cameras, they've been on the scene with our police department probably for 4 years. And they'd been in Atlanta much longer, because that's where he's based out of. But they cost, I can't remember what the cost is, or I think we're talking, there are a few thousand per camera, at least, probably. And they maintain them, etc. That you'll find these on the interstates. You'll find them, some of these neighborhood associations can actually purchase them privately and put them on the entrance and the exit or the entrance exit point of their neighborhoods. And I'll tell you right now that uh you have a lot of people that are out there in the world in our country. They're freaking out about it because they're like, "Oh my gosh, you can't do this. This is Big Brother watching." But they're putting them on public access points, like on interstates and stuff, and it doesn't capture the people's face unless, of course, they're hanging out of the car and looking at the camera. All it is that it provides a lead for law enforcement to be able to look into. So let's say you had a child abducted from a school, and there happened to be a camera nearby, and the vehicle. I just saw Ted Bundy's VW bug at the in Pigeon Forge. So if, let's say, it's a VW bug that was seen leaving from that scene, and you can just check the camera for VW bugs matching that description. And let's say you had one hit off of a camera within a minute of leaving the school, and it's about a minute away, then it gives you a lead, something to work with, and then you get a tag, and then et cetera. You get characteristics of that vehicle, et cetera, that could be beneficial to cops. So what you have is you have a contingency in our country that they're freaking out about it. But if you think back, Tyler, back in the day, people were freaking out about DNA too, and now juries, they're like, "Where's the DNA?" They want to see it. So
Right.
these things, like I said, are in 42 plus states. They are responsible for solving 10% of reported crime. 10%. And there's a mother load of cameras. They don't even have that many cameras out there. And that's pretty incredible. And I don't know, it's the way, it's the wave of our future. And not only is it good to provide us for a lead, but it's also good to exonerate people and to
Hmm.
exculpatory evidence that could show them completely on the other side of the town. And I've seen that too. So it's a good tool, and if used appropriately, and if cops do it inappropriately, then they can go to prison. So, uh,
Yeah.
there are strict rules, lose their job at a minimum. You know what I mean? So, um,
Yeah, I mean, cities like Detroit, Chicago, they've
yeah,
had camera systems. I know the city that's closest to me, Fort Wayne, I know they've
yeah,
had camera systems for a while. Cameras are up. Cameras have been up since
yeah,
probably for like the last 10 years at least.
yeah,
And like you said, they're great for those things. I know for the state of Indiana, you can go on the DOT website and you can pull up the cameras on the interstates anywhere in the state, and you can see how the roads are. You can pull up crashes, stuff
yeah,
like that. So
yeah.
they
Well, I mean,
they
what are you going
definitely
to
have
do?
their benefits.
Where are you going to draw the line? I mean,
Right.
is it going to get to the point? Are we going to outlaw Ring doorbell cameras? I mean, come on, it's
I hope
those
not.
things are out there. Well, yeah, I mean, but where are they going to possibly? Oh wait, law enforcement can't have access. Come on, So
Hmm.
it's a good thing. It's a good thing, and it's been a game changer for law enforcement. And I'll tell you this much: I talked to a DNA guy not long ago, probably last year, and he just told me, he goes, listen, in another 10 years, you might not even think about, you better just not even think about committing a murder. The DNA technology, well, I'll give you a quick example of technology, one other example real quick, and that's rapid DNA scanners. And so these things are coming out, and in the state of Oklahoma, we're state mandated that we're going to have these in 2027. And this is military technology that is coming to the civilians world. And theoretically, and the way that it was put to me is that you could take a swab from a blood trail at a homicide scene, stick it into this machine, and in 40 minutes it'll tell you if that individual is in CODIS. And not only that, but theoretically you could take a swab of a person in an interview room, from what I've been told, and you could take their swab in an interview room and you could stick it in that machine and it'll tell you if it's a match to the blood that's out at the scene or a swab out at the scene. That
Wow.
is insane. Okay. 40 minutes, and so that's going to be in the state of Oklahoma, and I'm sure other states are going to follow suit, and they're probably involved in that as well elsewhere. I don't know, but uh
Well, what's even more insane is I think back to when I was in dispatch and how long it would take to get registration information from another state.
yeah,
It could
yeah,
potentially take hours depending on what you're getting from,
yeah,
and you're talking about getting this in minutes. That's
yeah.
nuts.
Yeah, it is nuts, and it's just it's insane, and a lot of with the DNA technology in and of itself. I mean, I'm going to give the scientists, I'm going to give the medical examiner's office a lot of credit from New York City. I mean, because of 9/11, I mean, they have identified 1,649 of those victims as of today, and it's been 1,649 for a while. That's how I know the number. But with respect to that, there's still 40% of those victims that are yet to be identified. And New York City hasn't just thrown in the towel, man. They're looking for new ways to find out how to enhance that even more. And look where we're at just in the last few years with DNA itself. I mean, and just look where humanity has come. I mean, I think the first comparison of fingerprints was and you need to look this up, Tyler. The first comparison of fingerprints, if I'm not mistaken, was a couple of guys that were in Leavenworth prison, like towards 1900 or something along those lines, and they look exactly alike. I'm not kidding you. These guys look it up. These guys look exactly alike. I wish I knew their names off the top of my head. And they used fingerprints to be able to tell the difference between these two guys. That's how close they looked. And they both were incarcerated in the same prison. And that was one of the first times that they used DNA, or I mean fingerprints. So that was around that 1900, and DNA, we're talking about 1980. I think it was 1986 or 1989. It was used in England for the first time in the 80s in a murder trial, and then here in the United States, I think it was 1989 when it first hit a courtroom. And but judges, think about what judges have had to deal with respect to just getting a Facebook search warrant. I mean, at the time when those things came out initially, they probably were thinking, "Oh my gosh, is this like a wiretap?" I mean, how do we handle
Hmm.
this? What do we do? Oh my gosh, they're located in Menlo Park, California. How do we issue a warrant from Oklahoma to there? I mean, all this stuff we've had to tackle. Even in my
Yeah.
my tenure as a homicide guy. We didn't ever write search warrants to phone carriers in another state. We would just get grand jury subpoenas. Nowadays it's nothing. We just do it. So
Yeah,
that's part of it.
I agree with you. I think every time something big has come in, just in the past, at least in the past 30 years, the internet getting bigger than what it has ever been. Obviously, AI coming in, people tend to freak out and they start to reference books like 1984, and they start to um, look at things like RoboCop, and they start to assume the worst, and they think
Yeah.
that all these terrible things are going to happen. But
Oh
you're
yeah.
right. If stuff like this falls into the wrong hands, I don't necessarily agree with the decision made of for over the next 10 years not being able to make any laws or anything on AI. I think there should be some kind of um,
Well, there has to be some controls on it.
oversight. There has to be
Yeah.
control oversight on it. But I don't know. I'm not a political show, and I don't get into
No.
politics. So
No, but if you think about this just real quick, if you think about this, if you can do, I mean, you can put together a video of somebody speaking and they're not, and you can do all of this stuff. There's no doubt in my mind that you can put together a video of a perpetrator committing an act, and it's not even it's not even them. You know what I mean? Somebody of a different race, somebody, who knows what they can
mm,
do.
well, sadly,
I'm not savvy enough to do anything like that. Neither is anybody that I work with. But
I don't know. I'm not either. But sadly, there actually is a case going on. I only know about this because it's been all over the media. But there's a local high school where a couple kids were creating AI videos, and they were putting their classmates, particularly female classmates,
yep,
face on these AI videos, and they were
yep,
sexualizing them.
yep,
So there is some horrific things being done
that's
with
right,
with AI, even at a high school level, which is
that's right.
maddening. I'm not even
Which
sure.
has led
I
which has led to people's suicides too. By the way,
Yes, yes,
yeah,
100%.
it's horrific. Yeah, yeah.
So I
So
don't
you
know.
bring up great points, and not only that, I got to tell you, just for your listeners, this will make great sense, and everybody will understand this. Think about all the abbreviations that exist in the social media world. Okay, I that's a whole nother language in and of itself.
Mhm.
And so for somebody like me, that's I'm closing in on 56 years old. I've had to learn. Thank God I took typewriting in high school. You know what I mean? Otherwise, I'd be completely lost. You know what I mean? At least I could type
Mhm.
my reports. But all these abbreviations and stuff, and all of the stuff, if you can imagine, just the way your cell phone that you have right now, this is more powerful than the computer system in Apollo 11 that went to the moon. So the
It's
amount of
true.
stuff that's in these things, and yet you have detectives that in some instances may not, I don't know what their backgrounds are. All of our backgrounds are different, but you have detectives that are responsible for deciphering all this data and all these different data systems and stuff. And it's pretty amazing the level of training that it takes just to do my job on a remedial level. Well, or not just mine, but just any of the specialty units per se. But I know we're going to get into that a little bit about what I do. But yeah,
I mean, yeah, and even on a federal level, look at what they're having. They're having to do the same thing, but they're having to use Windows 98 to be able to do it. So there's that.
yeah, that's
But
true.
so let's jump in a little bit. I know we've talked before about what it is that you do, but kind of give us a rundown on what the life is like inside as a homicide detective.
Well, I use a little caution to people. Our job, we're not necessarily. I know that in some ways, I think that people kind of visualize us in homicide as being kind of at the top of the mountain, so to speak. It's that position that detectives aspire to become. Rarely do you kind of work up to that. It's a stairway going up to where you want to end up in the world of detective stuff. And I think that in large part, one of the reasons that our job has a level of significance like that is because we're dealing with life and death. And we're kind of a tour guide for people and the families to give them a tour on one of the worst experiences of their life. And furthermore, murder is interesting to the general citizen. So people care, whereas somebody's house gets broke into, well, I mean, that case is rarely going to get solved. And, it's not because of the detectives, it's just because of the sheer volume and so forth. So the life for me, just to kind of go backwards, I wanted to do this since I was a little kid. I won't belabor that, but I've wanted to do it forever. To become a homicide detective, it's going to be a process, and I know that the specialty, you have to become a cop first. A lot of people are like, well, I want to do that, but I don't want to go through the police academy. Well, you have to, and then you have to work the streets as a uniformed person, and then you're going to work up. They're going to want you to have a lot of investigative experience, whether that be narcotics. Uh, they want you to have a lot of interview experience. They want to have you have a lot of search warrant writing experience, stuff like that. And your ability to be able to communicate with people has got to be, that's probably one of our biggest attributes that you'll see with a homicide detective. We're all pretty good communicators. And we all have varying degrees of that. Believe me, we're not all just exceptional communicators, but hopefully you're gonna get to that point. And so the life with respect to I told my girlfriend after after I got a divorce, okay, that because you got to remember, to get to this point, you have to be somewhat obsessed with your job and your career, and you have to be willing to work a lot. And for me, I was working undercover and I was working a ton and I was rarely home, and that's just kind of part of it. You have to work a lot. You got to prove yourself. And that was the road that I took. And so anyway, when I ended up getting divorced, and then I met my next girlfriend, I was like, and now we're married and we've been together for 20 plus years. But the when on our first date, I literally said to her, I said, I'm one day wanting to be a homicide detective, and if that's some kind of an issue if that's going to be a problem for you, then we probably shouldn't go out on a second date. I mean, because that job entails it's a lifestyle. It really is. A lot of people say that they have a career. This is a lifestyle. I think that probably the closest comparison to that is a surgeon. I think surgeons they get called out a lot. You're working long hours. You have a very the only difference is that we don't make a fraction of the money that they do, but we have that demand within our career. And then on top of that, we see horrific things. Our phones ring constantly. We are pulled. We have a lot of stress, and that's the thing that's the difference between us and a surgeon. And I could speak on to both of these because I worked as a scrub tech forever, but so I know a lot of surgeries as well. So this is what I use as my relationship to compare the two. But the difference between their job and ours is that rarely they have a routine. I hate the word routine, but they have a procedure for this, and this. If this happens, then we do this. And we never know what the script is going to be because every single case there's similarities, but each case that we deal with is different. You're dealing with a different set of personalities, a different cast of characters, different, uh, different items of evidence, different reasons why, all this stuff. So you have to be very, very uh, good at just kind of the big picture kind of a deal. And it could go this way, that way, who knows what. And if you screw up, by the way, then you can end up getting sued for everything. And you may even go to prison. So you have to be absolute. You wouldn't go to prison for, I don't know. Yeah. Our consequences can be dire if we're wrong. And we don't want to be wrong. We want to be absolutely right 100%, you know? So that's all
I
part
mean,
of it. And that's just a taste.
I think we've all heard stories of situations unfolding, and detective gets something, or an officer in general gets something wrong, and now that whole case is thrown out of court. So there's obviously a lot on the line when you guys are doing your job.
Well, just to give you an idea, I just recently here in Tulsa, and this is public knowledge. I mean, I hate to even mention it. It's actually, I have nothing to do with this, but there was a murder conviction from back in the 90s from here in Tulsa. And that ended up, I guess it was a wrong. I don't know any of the people that are involved. I vaguely might know a couple of the people that were detectives from back then, that ended up being a settlement for the city of Tulsa for $15 million. So, and that just, yeah, it's a lot of money. And so we want to make sure that we're absolutely correct. And I don't know the details of the case. I really don't. But, I have no idea. But I will tell you this, we have to be right. And I don't know. And if you're not 100% on some of these cases, you probably need to pause a moment and wait and get to be that, you want to be 100%. And with the technology of today, it's pretty easy to kind of, it's pretty, you should be able to try to corroborate things based on that. So, but yeah, it's a very, very challenging position. It's a lot of stress, and you could also, I mean, I dream about it from time to time, and that's not the good side of it. That's just life. You know what I mean? So,
We talked a little bit earlier about AI and it making its way into the police force, just like it's making its way into everybody's life. Did you hear of there was a court case? I think it was in New York City. Could be wrong. But there was a court case where I think it was a defense attorney. I think it was a defense attorney was relying on AI for his case, and he was pulling up or researching quote unquote court cases that had gone to the federal Supreme Court, and he was using them in his arguments. And the judge finally stopped him and said, none of those cases really exist, right? I'm not familiar with any of those cases. He didn't do the research to back it up. He just relied on AI. So I think kind of going back into that, it's very important that in any job that you're doing, make sure we're doing our research before we just rely on AI.
If this judge just watched our channel, he wouldn't currently be standing neck deep in a pool of doo-doo.
So this judge was just caught using fake quotes and references to cases that don't exist.
And to be clear, this wasn't some local county judge in the backwoods of Louisiana or something. This came from a federal district court judge.
What happened was the judge issued a ruling in a complex biopharma case. The lawyer for the side that lost on the ruling was smart enough to look deeper into it, and he found all the errors and sent this letter to the judge about it, which prompted the judge to quickly withdraw the ruling.
Now, we've explained on this channel so many times how ChatGPT and other AI just make up legal stuff. It's actually pretty wild to mess around with it and watch it just create fake cases and quotes. While the judge hasn't yet admitted that AI was actually involved in the writing of this ruling, it sure looks like this was a classic case of AI hallucination.
You may have already heard about several lawyers that have been fined and even sanctioned for using AI to write their briefs, which caused them to include fake cases and quotes. But this is the first time that a judge seems to have done it.
Although it's possible it wasn't actually the judge himself. That's because judges often have law clerks write substantial portions of their opinion.
Law clerks are usually fresh out of law school, and depending on the judge, the clerk can sometimes write the entire opinion.
So it's possible that some young law school graduate who didn't understand biopharma case law, because let's be honest, nobody does, used ChatGPT to write this ruling and totally wrecked this judge.
yeah, I mean, I had not heard of that case, but I'm glad that the judge actually had enough of a brain to look it up instead of just taking this guy's word for it. You know what I mean?
I'll have to find that article and send it to you because it was quite comical to read.
Yeah. So I mean, that's just kind of it. I mean, it's very trying on a family, and there's no other way to put it. A lot of dedication.
Yeah. So we haven't really talked on this show much about raising a family in public safety, but I guess can you share a little bit of insight on how you made that work?
Well, I'll tell you what. I'm not one of those cops that lives in absolute fear and is always, fearful of the people that I've had dealings with over the course of my career. I've always tried to treat people right. And, some of the good advice that I'd been given by my father was that make sure that your badge is the same size it was the day they issued it to you, not 5 sizes too big. A good rule of thumb. I try to respect people. Don't make things personal. And because, I mean, let's face it, if somebody wants to find out, people know that there's a cop living in most of these houses because there's a police car sitting in the freaking driveway. You know what I mean? Both marked or unmarked. I mean, it's not like it's a matter of national security. People know. So you try to just be and take it to another level. I mean, imagine I've been on television for over 11 years. I get recognized all the time, and so, but I'm not always armed and et cetera out in the community. But I'm very, very careful about. You have to be worried. You have to worry about it. I've had a killer once that it was like, hey man, I know where your daughter goes to school, kind of a deal. And I'm like, no. I don't have any kids, but in reality, he was actually right, and I didn't tell him that. But I've had multiple people that have recognized me. I've had people that I've arrested that one of which came over to estimate my roof. You know what I mean? So you just try to treat people right. And as far as raising a family with it, and what do you share and what do you not share, and all this, that, and the other. I can tell you this much. There was an incident that one night I we get messages all the time, and I got a message about a particular death scene, and of course a photo comes in there. I'm sitting on the couch with my wife, and this photo comes in, or this video of an actual murder that happens, and I pull this thing up, and my wife happens to look over there while I'm looking at it, and it was horrific. It's so bad that I don't even watch. I never watched it again. You know what I mean? And so you have to kind of try to keep that. I try to, I don't really talk about those cases much unless it's just something completely. I think that it's important to include your, if your spouse wants to know, I don't think that you should keep them away from it. I think that you should make them a part of it. And I think that helps with them better understanding as to what it is that we deal with. Um, and I don't know. My daughter's 20. My daughter, as a little kid, always knew if dad's leaving in the evening and I'm going to work and I'm dressed. I wasn't dressed. And now I am, and I'm going to work, meaning I wasn't dressed in my uniform. And then now I'm going to work. That I can remember her saying, like, when she was 8 years old, "Oh, did you get a murder?" And this is my daughter, you know what I mean? Not that we sat her down and said, "This is what I do." It's just that, I mean, kids, they know what's going on. They know
They
what you're
pick
doing
up
and
on
stuff.
things.
Yeah,
Yeah.
sure they do.
Yeah.
So, but I don't know. I think that it's important to separate the two. It's important to have a personal life as well. I think that you should do things that are, healthy habits is what I call it, and things like that. And that's one of the reasons that we talked about, me teaching and stuff like that. Even though I'm still teaching about law enforcement, it's a healthy habit for me, and it's something that makes me feel good. And I've incorporated my wife with that because I pay for her airline ticket to join me, and so we make a little vacay out of it, and uh, and then she can kind of. I have to almost force her to show up to watch me speak, and I want her to, because she's like, "Well, I've seen you speak," and I'm like, "And you're going to see me again because I want you to be there." But in trying to include them into stuff like that, and I think
And
that that's really important.
you wonder why she scared the crap out of you in Tennessee.
Yeah, yeah, you're right. You're right. But she's,
But
and that's good to include them into that and meet the police
yeah.
officers and so forth.
Yeah, we talk about that quite a bit, or at least we have on this show about, you know, we us as in people in public safety, we get upset sometimes because we feel like our family doesn't understand, and we throw that out quite a bit.
Hmm.
Well, a lot of times the problem is because we don't give our family an opportunity to understand. We don't
Right.
tell them about the stuff.
Right.
And like to your point, like we don't need to tell them everything. We don't need to show them the gruesome
Right.
scenes that we've been on. We don't need
Right.
to share the horrific stories, but sometimes you do need to have a little bit of a conversation and let them
Yeah.
into your world a little bit. And I've mentioned this hundreds of times, but there's a couple departments here in town that are really good about this on like Sunday nights or Saturday nights or whatever. They designate a night where if they're on shift, they invite their entire family to come in and have dinner with them. And I think that's
Oh,
absolutely awesome. It
yeah, it
it
is.
obviously really helps incorporate both families together and helps kind of, I guess, bring that conversation to the dinner table, for lack of a better word. So I think
Yeah.
that's awesome.
I like that. And I can remember when the Murrah bombing happened, the Oklahoma City bombing had happened. And my mom was with the Oklahoma City Fire Department. She actually retired as a major with them. And I can remember that after that ended up happening, that they invited the families to come up there, and we were allowed to look through the books of pictures of what had happened there at the Oklahoma City bombing. And I thought that was a monumental decision that the fire department had made. And remember, this is in 1995, so I think we've come a long way since then. I don't know that necessarily that was the perfect way to do it. Uh, I could see them, having a discussion with families and telling them that you should be watchful of this and that, and your spouse may have signs of this or that, and it's probably not a bad idea to be cognizant of things along that line. There's a friend of mine that actually was one of the guys that searched through that building, and he was involved at, at great length in reference to the rescue of the. And there wasn't much of a rescue effort on that incident because most people died.
Right.
But I remember I talked to him and I was like, "Hey, I would love to have you on my podcast." And actually, one night he had talked to me about this a little bit more in depth in Virginia. We were both he was there and I was speaking, and I met him for the first time. He was a retired Oklahoma City cop, and man, it was tough. It was tough for him to even speak this much about it, and still to this day, he's like, "Nope, I'm not getting into that. I'm not opening up that door." And he still has issues, and that's but it was still important to it's that you're asking a question that's kind of tough because for everybody it's going to be different.
Right.
One can hope that you're going to have a spouse. They're going to be more understanding. I think that if you share your life with them, and you don't ignore them. And I think that first responders, they have a tendency at times to turn the television on and then they completely shield their loved ones. They'll ignore them. I mean, that's plenty of literature about this where you have to come back to reality, and we have to make an effort. Us first responders have to make an effort to turn away from the television set and to listen and be normal. Not be a
Yeah.
cop, not be a firefighter, not be, and to remember they're not trained like you. But the weird part is, and you can probably attest to this, Tyler, your wife works in the medical field too. So, she's understanding, but for somebody that didn't work in the medical field, or the law enforcement world, they haven't been trained, and they probably look and they see, it's nothing for me to get on the phone and start jibber jabbering about some kind of a case and having a lengthy conversation about it. But when your wife asks, well, what was that case about? And you're like, yeah, I don't really want to talk about it. It's weird. I don't know the answer to why that is, but that is one of those things that can happen.
I think
So
I think that's a good point. Like you need to as a family, more so as a couple, you need to sit down in the very beginning and decide, is this something you want to be involved in? Do you want me to
yeah,
tell you every little thing that I can tell you? Or would you rather that conversation has to start first. You can't just shut off completely, but at the same time, you also can't be like, hey, so I was on this gruesome car accident where 6 people died and were ejected. Like you gotta find a happy medium there somewhere.
you do. There's a really good book that I'm going to recommend to your listeners, and it's a book that they gave us in the academy, and it was right at the very tail end of our police academy, and it's called, and I'm pretty sure that I want to make sure that I tell them the right book, but it's called I Love a Cop, and yeah, here it is. It's I Love a Cop, and it's by Ellen Kirschman, and it's not expensive. I mean, as a matter of fact, I've seen some here that are $1.52 if you go to Amazon, that are used books, and you can't beat that price. But that's a good book for somebody that basically, let's say their loved one is working in this industry and maybe they're starting out. I think that's a great book for you to pick up and both of you read it, really. The person that's getting involved in not only law enforcement, I'm trying to single this way. I keep going this way because that's the area that I live in. But it doesn't matter if you're a law enforcement firefighter, you're a medic, everybody, we all see the same stuff. We all deal with the same people. So it's a good idea to recognize that. And really at the end of the day, you as the first responder, you should also consider, is this job worth it? Is your family worth it? Do you want to lose your family over something like this? And the one thing that I'll remind people is that in today's day and age, we have peer to peer, we have critical incidents response people, we have resources that exist today that did not exist 10 years ago, and there is not the stigma that exists like it used to. Back in the day, they used to be the way of the world is you'll be all right. You'll be all right. Let's get back to work.
It's not your emergency. Move on.
That's right. And I tell every time I speak, and I do add this every time I do speak, and I will add it again every other time I speak. But I always tell people, I'm like, because I had a couple of really rough cases that happened in 2024. And I actually had a moment where I thought, man, have I seen it? Have I just reached that point of no return where I just really should maybe do something different? And actually, I kind of came up with a sense of relief that I was like, oh my gosh, I'm still human. Good. This should bother you. And I tell people all the time, if this does not bother you, some of the stuff that you're seeing out here, and the craziness, then you probably shouldn't be doing this job. I want somebody that it does bother coming to my house that has feelings and empathy and sympathy and things along those nature. And I think that if you don't, what I'm getting at, the point to the story is what I'm getting at is, and don't be opposed to maybe family counseling if that's necessary, or whatever, but you don't want to lose your family over this industry or this job. Nothing is worth your family, kind of a deal. And I think that's important for
Yeah.
people to think about.
If you're having a internal conversation with yourself saying, well, if I don't do this, then who will? I think that's the wrong attitude to have, just based
Yeah,
off of what you said. Like,
agreed.
you have to take care of yourself before you can take care of other people. Now,
That's
my
right.
question to you is, do you think there is way more violence in the world today than there was 20 years ago, or do you think we're just becoming more aware of it due to social media and podcasts and things like that?
I think that that's an interesting question, and what I will tell you is this: one of the coolest homework assignments I got when I was in college back in the day was our college professor had us that he'd give us a decade, and we would have to pick a month and a year from the 20s, and we had to research on microfiche the New York Times. And so we would go and we had to find violent crimes that happened within the May of 2022, or no, I'm sorry, May of 1922. Okay. Or something like that. And that would be your month. And then somebody else would have one. And then you'd have to research all the different crimes. And I'll tell you something right now. Macabre killings have been happening forever. Okay. People have been getting killed for a long, long time, or they've been committing crimes for a long, long time. But I do so it's not like this is a novelty as to today's day and age where this stuff's going on. You're absolutely right. That today's day and age, Tyler, right now, people are getting this information in real time. They get it in a news feed on their phone, almost instantaneous. Okay. That didn't happen back in 1922. People, if they didn't have, they may not even hear about it their whole life. So now it's not only national news, but it could be world news. And so, and it's at everybody's fingertips. So that's one of the things. But I also think that I will tell you this: when I first started on this police department, we were getting like 30 to 35 murders a year, maybe 40 would be a peak time. Nowadays, we're getting 60 to 80 a year. We're kind of on an off year right now. We're at like 47, but we're getting 60 to 80 murders. I'm going to say that, and that's even with the advances in technology in the medical field, saving people's lives. I think that we're getting, and I know that homicides across the board, across this country, are declining this year. I think this year we're down, but, and I don't have the answer as to why that is. I think it's because we're catching more people, and you don't have that many, if they're locked up, they're not out killing more, so, and I don't think we have near as many serial killers that we used to have either, because they're getting caught, they're getting caught with, DNA technology, forensic genealogy, that kind of stuff. So, no, I don't know. It's interesting. I think that there's probably more violent crime that exists today. And I think that some of it might be attributed to a desensitization. Maybe some of it is this. There's not that the ability to interpersonally communicate with people. They do it via text, emails. There's that. People aren't good communicators like they used to be. And people grew up playing video games that I've never even played, man. I mean, those video games of today where they're killing people online, I think that has a lot to do with it. And if you think about a lot of these shooters and stuff, a lot of these shooters, these school shooters and stuff, they're motivated by other school shooters, and they want to be the next greatest killer that hits the media, and et cetera. And I don't know, but that's a great question. I would love to know the real scientific data that exists behind that. I'm sure, I know the FBI is all about some of that stuff, and they research all that stuff, but yeah, I don't know. My answer to you in a short way is I think that there's probably more crimes, but there's also a lot more, but that stuff did happen. There's some of that stuff that happened back in the day. Come on, for
Oh
sure.
yeah, we were just talking about Jack the Ripper. Like, look at all the
Yeah.
crap that he was doing and how many
Yeah.
years ago that incident was. So
Yeah.
no, I agree. I think as far as crimes go, like heinous type crimes, I mean, let's be honest. Let's look at some of the history of things that have happened even 100 years ago, but even go back 1,000 years ago and how they were killing people. They were gruesome, gruesome homicides
Oh, yeah.
centuries ago.
Yeah.
So I think now technology has obviously changed. You don't see people getting ripped apart by horse-drawn carriages anymore. But
Well, I'll
um,
tell you this much. No, not like that. No, I mean,
nah.
but I'll tell you. Let me give you just a taste as to how far we've come in the world of just you know go back to, and it's recently been in the news, the Buford Pusser, Sheriff Buford Pusser from McNairy County, Tennessee, Walking Tall movies,
Oh
and
yes.
that's a big deal because, and there's a lot of people like, well, who cares at this point? Well, I care, and
Mhm.
society should care. We want to know the truth, and
Yep.
it's for Pauline Pusser is why we need to know that, and I've told a lot of people this because I had that on my podcast, and I had a lot of negative. I got a lot of great comments, and I got a lot of naysayers and a lot of really ticked off people because they were Buford Pusser's fans, and I had to remind people that I'm like, listen, out of the Mount Rushmore if Tennessee had a Mount Rushmore, they'd have Dolly Parton on there, they would have Elvis Presley, they would have Davy Crockett, and then the other person would be Buford Pusser. So if you think that the state of Tennessee and the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation is interested in etching his face off of there just because they want to ruin this guy for no reason, think again. But what they did is they utilized technology of today to a crime that was never even really investigated, so to speak. I mean, the investigation that was done on that was pathetic. But let's take it back a little bit further, and I'll mention the I think it's the Valeska axe murderers that happened in Iowa, Southwest Iowa. Look it up, Tyler. It's a cool case where I think it was 6 or 7 people were murdered in this house, a lot of kids, and then the parents. And there was a couple of these kids that were over there on a sleepover. Valeska axe murders. It's actually the most famous. It's the most famous. I'm gonna say unsolved murder in Iowa, but it happened in 1912. And back then, when these murders happened, the citizens, when they got wind of these murders, there was a lot of citizens that went over to the house and they walked through the crime scene, and people were stealing stuff. I know it sounds crazy, but people were taking souvenirs from the house, and this is the crime scene. This is before the thing is even. There was no crime scene detective work going on. I mean, come on, they didn't have any of this training. And so nowadays, and if you even go to the Buford Pusser murder that I'm talking about, or the Pauline Pusser murder, that happened in 1967, if I'm not mistaken. The technology, they didn't have crime scene detectives back then, so to speak, and they certainly didn't have forensic genealogists, and they didn't have blood spatter experts. As a matter of fact, all they could tell you is if it was A positive or O positive blood. And I don't even know that they even really had a medical examiner investigation in a medical examiner's office. I don't know. I know they've had coroners since medieval times, but
Mhm.
nothing like the medical examiner's office of today. It was nothing like it is today. And so I think we've made great strides, and I think that's keeping some of the crime at bay, honestly. But I think people are quicker to pull out a gun and shoot somebody, honestly, today than they were back in the 50s, let's say.
I know we need to go back to people settling some of these matters over fisticuffs rather than pulling a gun out. Like,
Yeah.
it's insane. I would much rather see two people beat the crap out of each other and then shake hands at the end of the altercation than somebody say, nope, pull a gun out and start shooting them.
Or just walk away.
Or walk away.
Just walk away. Read a book. Take off.
So hard. It's tough. It's tough. Let's be honest. I mean, I have never, I can't say never. I have been in situations like that before, and it is very tough to walk away. It is, your ego
some of that's due to
plays
culture.
a huge role. Culture, yes, but your ego plays a huge role in that. And as men, our ego tends to be a lot higher than others. And I think we've talked about this. In fact, my last guest that I had on last week, we talked about ego in the fire service. And one of the best things that people as black hats, but also as officers within the fire service can do is to put their ego at bay and realize that this is not a competition. We're not out here to prove ourselves to anybody. We're out here to do a job. Right. And it's the same thing in real life. Somebody comes up to you and they're wanting to cause problems with you. Put your ego away. Walk away if you can. If you have to protect yourself, that's something totally different. Like, do what you got to do to protect yourself. But if it's over road rage, we've had, I can't tell you how many times we've had incidents in Indiana where two people get into a road rage incident. We actually had a case. This was, I don't know, probably about 10 years ago. There was a younger guy and an older guy. They both got in a road rage incident. They both got out of their vehicles. They started fighting each other. The older guy had a heart attack and died. The younger guy went to prison over it because they were involved in an altercation. So it's not worth it.
No, it's not.
You can't put that ego away.
Well, and you get a lot of these young people that, I just had a murder like this. My last murder actually was about this. It's you get these young guys that, they're young adults and they don't think things through. And in the communities, in some of these communities that they live in, if they don't do something about it, it's a sign of weakness, and it's going to be worse for them if they don't do something. And I don't know where we got to that point in our world where that is kind of like embraced in communities. And I've said it for a long time. What we can do, people will ask all the time, well, what do we do about it? Well, I'll tell you what we do about it. It's one person at a time, and you have to educate people, and you have to, I've always thought this, and since you see a Christmas tree behind me, this is a great point to bring up. I love it. The reason why I'm showing that off is because my stepdaughter and my stepdaughter, stepson, and my daughter, and they're all my kids anyway, but that was the present to my wife, to their mom. They were going to do that while we were out of town, and it's to relieve some of our stress. Which, how cool is that?
That's
and
awesome.
They did a really bang up job, by the way. Hang on a minute, I just spilled my drink. They did a bang up job on it, by the way.
Speaking of banging things up, he's banging up his table.
And I've got tea over here, but it's okay. It didn't spill out of my cup. My cup just hit the floor. But here's the deal. I've always said this, and this is perfect with this tree behind me that just came to mind. I've always said to people, every year around Christmas time, there's a movement, Toys for Tots. Let's get a toy drive. Let's do, all of this other stuff. And they always want you to bring them unwrapped. And the reason for that is because, believe it or not, there's people that are mean people out there. They used to bring wrapped gifts, and you'd be surprised, man. There would be people that would wrap up a half-eaten pizza and put it in the box and stuff like that. Just stupid stuff, But the point that I'm getting at is this. In today's day and age, if you think about this, let's say that kid gets a gift, or they get like what's $50 going to get you at the store today? Not much. Those kids are going to lose interest in those toys in about 5 minutes. I mean, literally, that's the interest span of children is nothing, And I've always thought this, and this wasn't told to me. It's just something that came to my mind, especially as a school resource officer. I used to think about this a lot. What a better gift would be is people that are professionals in the community writing their names up there on this tree, willing to be mentors for a kid for a year, for the next 6 months, while they're in school. I don't care, whatever the parameter is. And I remember how I came up with this is I had a cousin that was involved in like CASA work, and he was like, what he was kind of one of those, what can be done with these kids, and we can save them all, and I don't want to go that far to say that we could save them all. I think some of them have had a upbringing that's challenging, and some of them are, there's people out there that are just, they're born evil. I'm just telling you. Maybe that's my jaded sense, okay, of dealing with them. But I'm saying, what a better gift to have a mentor, all right, or somebody that's going to do that. Or for a second thing that you can do is, how about educating these kids as to the Boy Scouts of America, or the Explorers, or Civil Air Patrol, and being willing to go there and help facilitate them being able to get there to become members of something like that. And I've always thought, all my life, I thought, if you give these kids an opportunity to be around other kids that are successful and they're doing things with their life, I think you'd be amazed at how many of these kids would pick a different road. They would pick a different road, and they would be a lot more successful, and it'd probably keep some of these kids from getting killed. But a lot of these kids that do get killed, they just didn't have that opportunity because they're multi-generational gang members. They're living with not with zero supervision at home. And there was a cop that I knew years ago when I was a young cop, and I'm not going to mention his name, but man, you talk about a guy that was just a straight up douchebag. Really, I couldn't stand this guy. You talk about it, and this is a cop, and I'm a cop. You know what I mean? This guy was just a jerk. But the one thing that I remember about him is that I heard that he went to the complexes, and he actually went, and he would take kids to the Boy Scout troops, and get them signed up, and get them involved. And I thought, man, okay, he's trending up. Trending up didn't exist then, but he was trending up, and I put him a couple of spots up. And I'm like, all right, well, he's not 100% a jerk. He's just a half a jerk, but but it was still you got to be willing to do things like that. And I think that we in the law enforcement, we're constantly running around complaining about what's wrong with these people and how come this isn't happening. Well, I mean, what are we doing to step in there and kind of show them the road, and show them the light on it, and being able, we're a big part of these kids' lives, believe it or not. And a lot of these people that are the people that we deal with when they become big people, we have dealt with them a long time. And what are we doing to try to steer them in the right direction and stuff? And we have a lot of power with respect to doing that. And we should be able to be accessible for that. And I am accessible. And that's one of the things that I think that we need to be kind of ambassadors in the community, really. And that force that, we're just not throwing people in jail. We're doing a lot of right too. And I think that if anybody's listening to this, and I hope that they are, I mean, you got to listen to Tyler. He's trying to do some good things here. You know, think outside of the box and think about what might work for you in your community, and things that you can do to be involved. And whether that be Project Trust, where kids that are troubled youth, they have an opportunity to hang out with you for, an afternoon, things like that. And I've been a big part of that. I've volunteered because we're on TV. So I feel an obligation that we should probably be a part of stuff like that. And, you sign up to this job, you're supposed to do stuff like that. And hopefully you think about it. And that makes you a better person, a better cop, a better first responder. And then you got to take care of yourself all at the same time, and manage your family life in addition to that. What a challenge that is, right, Tyler?
Oh yeah. I'll end with this. I shared this the last time that you were on the show, but it reminds me of a couple calls that I had. Both of them were two separate calls, two separate cities, and they were both overdoses. One was involving a dad, and one was involving a mom. And in both cases, the child was the one that found mom or dad unconscious and started CPR. We're talking,
Wow.
one kid was 10 years old, and the other kid, I think, was 12 or younger, potentially. But the first people that they see, they obviously called for help, knew to call for help. First
Mhm.
people they see are either police, fire, or EMS. And that is a perfect opportunity for us in public safety to make a great first impression with that child. Are
Yeah.
you going to just run right by them and push them out of the way? Or is somebody going to stop and sit with that child and say, hey, here's what's going on. We're trying to take care of him, try to calm
Yeah.
him down. Don't lie to him by any
Right.
means. Do not lie to him. But I have kids at that age can go one of two ways. They can either continue to go down the path that their mom or dad went down, or they can go down the path of, well, this police officer came and talked to me, and
Yeah.
now I want to be a police officer, and they end up doing that, or a firefighter or whatever. So I think
Yeah,
it's
you're right.
very important that we take a couple seconds. If you ever find yourself in that situation, we take a couple seconds, couple minutes, and spend some time with that child, because they're human too, right? They're the victim in this situation, not just the patient that we're taking care of.
Yeah. There was a kid, I had just started as a school resource officer. I mean, just started. I've been doing that job for like 5 minutes. And I was walking into the school, one of the schools that I was assigned to work, and it was a rough school. It's a school my wife actually went to. It was a middle school, but we got some kids in this school that are legitimate gang members, literally. And as I walked in I was walking right down the concrete pathway leading to the front doors. Some kid said something extremely derogatory to me, and I couldn't believe it. You know what I mean? I don't even remember what it was, but it was something that was really, really hateful. And I ended up taking that kid aside, and I said, "Hey, you know, what in the world are you?" First of all, I'm a parent, for God's sakes. What would you think if somebody said that to your parent? And after talking to him for a little bit of time, and not having my head explode over it, because believe me, it came to mind. But I thought that is going to accomplish nothing here. And I just had a little talk with him, and I was like, "Hey, you would feel horrible if somebody said that to your mother or your father." And I'm just asking you that you think about that. And by merely taking it a different angle and taking it that approach with him, believe me, it didn't take long before I had the respect of those kids in that school, and I never heard anything like that again. It just didn't happen. And I think that we just have I don't know, I isn't it we have such a massive responsibility, and an incredible we're incredibly blessed to be in a position that we're in, where we actually, our voice and things that we say actually may matter, you know, and it could change the course of somebody's life. And we're not, like I said before, we're not just out to try to railroad people, and we don't railroad people anyway, but we're not just trying to ruin people's lives. We do a lot of good in the world. It's just unfortunate that every now and then, when a cop does something really stupid somewhere in this country, we all kind of get lumped into that, and
Mhm.
people think that we're all the same, when in fact we're far from it. And a lot of great people out there that do this job. As a matter of fact, I will encourage your listeners, if you have somebody that's sitting there listening to this, go, man, maybe that's something for me. Maybe I want to be a police officer. Well, if your record doesn't look like you've ridden around with Jesse James, you might be eligible to apply. You know what I mean? And you could have a really good job and so forth, and look into it. And if your record isn't that, well, maybe you can do something else in law enforcement that doesn't necessarily require you to have a gun or a badge, or the medical field, and or fire. Man, I want to do this life over again, Tyler. I want to become a firefighter. That's something I want to do. You know what I mean?
Hey, cops need heroes too. It's okay.
Yeah, I know. They're my heroes, believe me.
I again, just to end with this, we talked earlier about cameras being up everywhere, and that's how we need to act as people in public safety. Act like you're being recorded. Unfortunately, that's kind of the best way to get through some people's heads. You should have
Mhm.
some integrity, and you
Yeah,
shouldn't have to act differently with cameras around, but act like somebody's recording you, because chances are somebody is. So
that's right. Yeah, that's
with
right. Good
that,
advice.
with that, Jason, I greatly appreciate you taking time after your long trip home. Thanks for joining.
So much for short. He says, "Hey, we're going to do this. Is going to be really short." I was, and I don't care. I could sit here and talk
I think
forever.
our last one was 2 hours, 2.5 hours.
Probably, but we've cut this down. I encourage your listeners that if I'll throw out a plug for myself. If you're interested in, by all means, you're welcome to. This is free. You can join. You can join me on my Detective Jason White YouTube page. Go to Detective White Jason or Detective Jason White, my YouTube page, and check out any one of my 74 epic podcast episodes.
with some exceptional people, from the Dahmer lead, one of the Dahmer detectives, to the Night Stalker detective, and one of Ted Bundy's victims is actually on there, and the list goes on. And if that's not your thing, well, Steve-O's on there too. So from Jackass, so there's plenty of different variety. But there are people that are really significant individuals in the world of criminal justice for the most part. And check it out. I would love to have you on there. Furthermore, I'm on TikTok and I'm on Instagram and all this other stuff, and I'm very accessible. I like to interact. And Tyler, I want to thank you for having me on here for a second time. It's a real honor, and I'm honored that you would have asked, and that you think that what I have to say is important. And thank you. I appreciate it very much.
Kind of stole my thunder because I was going to put the plugs in for you, but you made it easier for me, so that's great.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Awesome. Thank you.
Appreciate it.